Senna versus Prost is one of the most intense and toxic rivalries in Formula One. But how did it start? Were there any moments that made it worse? And how did the drivers see it after they calmed down? Well, that's what we're here to discuss today. Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be discussing the rivalry between Ayrton Senna and Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. I'm looking forward to getting into this one. This is a really interesting topic, and it's something that going through the research is quite interesting. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of background first, just to understand what was happening, to kind of set the mood, set the scene, so you guys can visualize this rivalry. So a bit of background on Senna then. He was, as we all know, he was the rising star of F1. He was, like, when people think of the most famous F1 driver, they'll say Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna. Those three, those are the greats of Formula One. So Senna was the rising star of F1. He had been so competitive in all the junior categories, but he was unable to find a decent seat with an F1 team, and he ended up in Tolman for the 1984 season, and that was his debut season in Formula One. This was a team who were yet to finish higher than fourth, and Prost by this time had already been with McLaren for 4 years. So when Senna joined the team in 1988, Prost was already a two-time world champion with the team and was firmly the #1 driver. Fun fact, it was actually Prost who said to Ron Dennis at McLaren to put Ayrton Senna in the seat. So Senna, I guess you could say, has Prost to thank for his championships with McLaren. They weren't actually going to hire him, so, well, that's as far as my research tells me. They weren't actually going to hire him, so, I mean, I guess Senna has Prost to thank for that. So we've got a bit of background now. We understand Senna, passionate, driven, young driver who's joined the sport in Formula One. He's got a lot of championships in his junior categories behind him. And then we've got Prost, who is kind of already seasoned to Formula One. He's comfortable in McLaren. He's built the team around him to a very dominant car. And yeah, so we're just going to find out how the rivalry actually started. Well, picture this. It's the 1988 season, and you have the two best drivers on the grid on your team. So it would be similar to when McLaren in 2010 had the 2008 champion of Lewis Hamilton and the 2009 champion of Jenson Button in the team. Like, it's like at the time, although I guess you could say of all time they are still greater drivers, but like you had two incredibly competitive drivers, the greatest drivers on the grid arguably in the 88 season in your team. That season, 1988, McLaren dominated the field, winning 15 of the 16 races of the season, with 15 pole positions of the 16 races. It is the most dominant car to date. No other cars have equaled that, not even Mercedes. Yes, they may have got more wins in one season, but we've got a larger season, so you can't really go by that. This is the MP44, if you haven't already understood which car I'm talking about. What a car. That's all you can really say. It's just a phenomenal car. Tensions rose towards the end of the season when Prost feared that McLaren bosses were giving Senna preferential treatment. This was proven true through a meeting with the head of Honda's R&D department. I'm going to butcher this name. Nobuhiko Kawamoto. Nobuhiko Kawamoto. Let's go with that. He's obviously Japanese. Why did I say that? But Nobuhiko Kawamoto, I'm just going to roll with that. And he said that the Japanese engine manufacturer had an affinity with Senna's samurai driving style. So you can see there's a bit of favoritism there. There were also rumors that Senna was actually getting a better engine with more like developed parts than Prost. I don't know if it was in this season, but I just remember hearing that in, I believe it was one of the documentaries on Senna. Prost obviously kicked up a fuss about this. He's very much believes in equal opportunity for drivers in the team, which should be. And yeah, so he kicked up a fuss, and he was promised a more transparent team approach favouring equality between the drivers. However, this was not to be. So let's just go through some moments that made the rivalry worse. Skipping through their time as teammates, the '89 season, Prost won the championship because Senna crashed him out on purpose in the final race and was then disqualified for re-entering the track incorrectly. So they'd made an agreement at the San Marino GP that whoever was leading in the first corner would win the race in front of the driver, such as the dominance of their car that season. Prost got off the line and into the first corner in front of Senna. However, there was a restart and Senna then ended up in front on that restart. When confronted about overtaking Prost when he shouldn't have, Senna denied an agreement like that had ever been made, just like Michael Schumacher didn't crash out on purpose at Monaco to get pole. But it seems like Senna was just being difficult. But I can understand that. If the race was restarted from the grid, I think it's only fair that all bets are off. Like, the race is restarted, so that agreement should also be restarted if that agreement ever existed. That's just my perspective on things. So moving on to 1990 then, Prost moved to Ferrari, but the rivalry was still very much present, and it came to a head at the Suzuka Grand Prix, and this is a famous one. So Senna knew that if he was in front of Prost, or they both crashed out, he would win the championship. There were debates over poles starting on the dirty side of the grid, but nothing changed. Basically, Senna was kicking up a fuss saying, I'm the fastest driver, why should I have to start on the dirty side of the grid? He made an appeal, nothing came of it. They just ignored him. So Senna said in just remark to this that it kind of played out. Senna said that he would fight to stay first into the first corner no matter what happened. I mean, think about it. You're leading the championship. You just need to finish in front of the person who's behind you. You're on pole, and then if that person crashes out, you win anyway. So I mean, if you think about it, he's got nothing to lose. Like he's basically going to win either way. So as we know what happens, I'll put a replay up now. He ended up running straight into Prost, and they both crashed out. Senna therefore won, and McLaren won the Constructors' Championship. I mean, not the best moment for Senna. Let's be real. It paints Senna in a really bad light, to be fair. Alain seems more like a passenger in the rivalry. I do have to say that I like Senna. I guess I would say more than Prost, but I feel like Prost, when I did my research, he seemed a bit more like the innocent party. He built McLaren up and then kind of been forced out the team, and they didn't really want him. Similar to the way that things have gone with Vettel and Ferrari. He kind of built that team up, and just now it's being fobbed off to Leclerc. I mean, I can understand why Leclerc is a better driver than Vettel ever was, but still, it's hard to take. So I can see both sides of you, but I feel like just Senna's passion for racing, I think, really hits home for me. But as I said earlier, it's not his finest moment. So how did the drivers see it all once it all cooled down? Well, Prost and Senna did actually become friends after all this. This is very similar to a lot of rivalries. Lauda and Hunt, they were good friends. Rosberg and Hamilton, they're good mates now, and they grew up racing together. So they were, I guess, I wouldn't say brothers, but they were definitely close friends, as they were racing a lot of the championships together when they were racing in the Yamaha Championship with Mercedes as their sponsor. But Prost and Senna did become friends after all of this. They reconciled at the end of the 93 season when the Brazilian famously pulled his rival up to the top step of the podium after the final race of the season in Australia. When recalling this, Prost said that after that podium, Ayrton started talking to me again. So nice ending to an incredibly bitter rivalry. I know that the rivalry goes into so much more detail than what I've said, but those were the key moments that made the rivalry a lot worse, and those are the moments that their rivalry came to head. Obviously, they weren't even talking to each other when they were at McLaren. Obviously, they weren't talking to each other when they were at Ferrari because they're different teams, but that was how toxic the relationship between Prost and Senna were. They would have different engineers meetings and everything. They would not work together, and they wouldn't share details with the team like for other drivers, so the other driver could see what setup they're using. It was toxic, but it was also really good for McLaren because it pushed them to innovate better, if that makes sense. You had two incredibly driven drivers, and that's why I think with Mercedes, Hamilton and Rosberg because their relationship was so, it was properly being pushed and tested, and Rosberg's the only real person who's actually pushed Hamilton in that Mercedes seat.
Bruh.
And well, just the only person that's really pushed him in Formula One in general, I guess you could say, as a teammate at least. And that's why I think Mercedes is so dominant, because it was toxic between Hamilton and Rosberg. It wasn't as bad as Prost and Senna, obviously, but it pushes the team, because it's stressful for the team, but because you have these two drivers that are incredibly motivated, it's like, no, say I'm Hamilton, no, I'm going to beat Rosberg. Say I'm Rosberg, no, I want to beat Hamilton. You're pushing, and I think that's what's led to their success. So there we have it, a sweet ending to a salty rivalry. That is it for this week's video. Thank you very much for watching, if you are still watching up until this point. If you enjoyed this and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, really appreciate it, and let me know in the comments what you thought. If you think there's any points that I missed out that other people should know about, in the comments, mate. Go and stick it down there. That'll give some more facts for people to learn, which is what this channel is about. It's just about learning stuff about F1 and just all the hot topic that really goes on. But yeah, as I said before, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.